Hey guys, Tom itself here. Last month I got some really awesome internet. Like, amazing. Look at that speed test. Wow. Anyway, I want to talk about how that has affected my multiplayer gaming experience in the past month. I gave myself a little while to try it out. Anyway, first let me say that bandwidth, as you can tell, is essentially no longer a concern. Later on in this video I'm going to get into trying to give some comparisons, make that gigabit number make some sense. But for now, let me say just bandwidth, is, on my end at least, from my ISP to my house, no longer is a concern. It's no longer the limiting factor. Instead, other stuff is. Other people's ISPs, other links in the chains, other servers. On my end, that's no longer the bottleneck. A lot of the times it is the bottleneck for you, so that's one less issue that I have to deal with now. As you're probably already aware, there are two basic methods for getting people together for a multiplayer game. The first is peer-to-peer, the other is host. And Call of Duty and Battlefield offer two good examples of these two different models. Peer-to-peer, what Call of Duty runs, one of the players that's in the game is the host, and everyone else in the game connects to the host, and then the host connects back to everyone else too, and all the data flows through the host Xbox where the game is running, and all the little disputes about who got what when get resolved by that host. Now, in a dedicated server example, about what Battlefield 3 runs, instead there's a server off in a data center somewhere that is the host, and all of the players are just clients to that one server. But a little bit different, the big difference being that one of the players isn't host. Let's face it, some people's connections just cannot handle ground war properly. It turns into a laggy, jumpy, teleporty mess that I had, until now, generally tried to avoid, and maybe now I'll play some more of it. Now, both of those methods have their pros and cons, and I would take a whole nother video to get into all that. Instead, I just want to focus on the quality of the connection to the host, be it peer-to-peer or dedicated. When people talk about fast internet, they're usually talking about bandwidth. But for multiplayer gaming, bandwidth isn't the big deal, it's ping. It really is. And if you're dropping packets, or if they're getting to the other end, it's varying how long it takes, so they arrive in a different order than they were sent. That will get things really screwed up really fast, especially in games that are as fast-paced as Call of Duty and Battlefield. Firefights are over in less than a second. It really does make a difference of how long it takes for your packets to get from your game over to the host. With peer-to-peer, it's a bit luck-based. You could pull host. Someone living near you might be in the game and might pull host, and in either case you probably have a pretty good experience. Or, for whatever reason, someone across the country could pull host and things wouldn't be so great. In the end, you end up needing to have that residential to ISP connection, and then the ISP to ISP over the main backbones of the internet, and then back down from an ISP to someone's house and their Xbox. And you have to deal with those household to ISP connections both ways. Whereas a dedicated server is usually going to be in a data center somewhere with a high quality connection, and so that's the advantage there. On the other hand, when you connect to a dedicated server, you know exactly what you're going to get. Well, if you're playing in Europe, it's still not going to be any better. You still won't have that ISP to household down getting in the way, but you're not taking a huge chunk out here if you're still going to go long distances. I'm going to get into a whole lot more specific examples later, but that's the general idea. Alright, so I wanted to try to make some kind of objective comparison from my old ISP to the big fancy gigabit fiber that I've had for the past month. And so I guess I should tell you what the scenario was before that. Alright, for at least all of Black Ops 2's lifespan, it's been the same. I've been sharing a house with two other guys, and we've had a DSL connection that was 12 megabit down and 1 megabit up. We were all playing Call of Duty on that, and it worked okay. I'll say that we pretty much got what we paid for. The main issue with that, however, was the connection was kind of flaky. We'd get a fair amount of jitter, the packets would get dropped occasionally, and at times the whole thing would just go down for a couple minutes for no reason. But still, it wasn't terrible. And occasionally, especially with all three of us on, we'd pull host, and it would be noticeable, but it wouldn't be amazing. Now, I should also say that there are probably 5 more guys who play regularly with us, and all within about a 500-mile radius of where the 3 of us are. So, some geographic range, but not huge. To try to get some objective stats, at least for Call of Duty, what I did was I took our demolition stats for all 8 of us, and that's demo is going to be what we've been playing since, I think, mid-March, since they changed the domination spawns, and still have been. And so I got that when we got the fiber, and then after a month I went ahead and pulled the new stats and figured out how things had changed for the past month. Things like kill death and score per minute. And so we can go ahead and look at some plots. Previous data is in blue, and then the last month with fiber is in red, like KD, score per minute, even kills per total plants and diffuses in demo. It's hard to really see a trend here. On average, both those stats have increased. So I went ahead and took the percentage increase for both score per minute and kill death percentage, not just the ratio. And it's a lot of variation there, and you probably can't guess which of the 3 are fiber and which of the other 5 aren't. Yeah, I was a little surprised by this, but, well, I'll go ahead and tell you. The 1st, 2nd, and 8th are fiber, and everyone else isn't. So, as you'll note, there are some people who, in our little group, whose KD went up more than those of us who got fiber. And so in terms of these stats, the people with fiber took 2nd, 4th, and 5th places in these stats. The guys who got 1st and 3rd in these stats are the only 2 who aren't master prestiges. And so I will say that it looks like if you want to get better, the best things you can do is just play more, get more experience, and that will be a significant benefit to you. However, if you played a lot, fiber might help a little bit. However, I think that mostly speaks to just how bad our connection was prior to this upgrade, and all the crazy jitter issues we'd have at times. And so that's mostly what you're seeing change here. So it seems fairly obvious that this internet upgrade hasn't revolutionized anything for us. It still mostly comes down to skill and experience. And in terms of which those stats, it's playstyle, especially if you want to focus on one over the other. If you want to try and raise your KD, you can do so fairly easily at the expense of your score per minute. So I'm going to say connection, while it's helped, it hasn't really made as big a change as I was expecting. Let's talk about what lag looks like in Black Ops 2. Just your everyday, it takes time for the communications, the packets to travel between the host and the clients. It's really obvious once you know what you're looking for, and that is that the ammo counter updates after your gun recoils. You'll see the muzzle flash and everything will kick out, and then the ammo counter will be reflective of what the host Xbox sees as happening. And so I can count frames between when the muzzle flash or the gun jumps and the ammo is deducted. And it's after the ammo is deducted is when you'll see things update, like players will die, you'll get your kills, all that kind of stuff. I also should note that the sound is delayed 3 to 4 frames, and I think that's one of the reasons people complain about lag a lot, is because they'll hear their gun fire even after they're actually dead on their screen. It's another weird thing Black Ops does, and if Treyarch could figure out how to make it so that your sound would stop as soon as you were dead, people would complain a lot less. Anyway, back to regular lag. On a really good connection, I'll see on average probably 4 frames between the muzzle flash, the gun recoil, and then my ammo counter deducting my ammo, and if I got in a kill, the guy finally dying. More typical, though, especially on the DSL, would be 6 to 8 frames. That's a bit over 1/10 of a second at that point. However, on a 3-bar, 100 plus milliseconds, you'll start to get into the 10 to 11 frames between muzzle, the bullet coming out of your gun on your screen, and the host actually confirming that yes, your ammo has been fired and you've gotten a kill. So that's the kind of thing you're looking for if you're looking at this. And I don't know, I tend to see slightly better, but we're going to get more into ping here. Now, this internet is awesome, there's no denying that, but it doesn't solve all of the problems. It certainly can't. Now, for example, in Call of Duty with the peer-to-peer matchmaking, you still have to find people fairly close to you, and hopefully the host, if it's not you, it's someone fairly close to you. I said, there are 3 of us who are regularly playing together, but I don't really notice we're pulling host that much more often than we had been. The exception being that if the host migrates and all 3 of us are in the game, there's a pretty good chance that one of the 3 of us will get host. But that's about all I can say, and that doesn't happen every game. So that really hasn't, like, the ability to pull host or get a really good host hasn't improved a whole lot. Yeah, matchmaking settings to best. Yep, got that taken care of. And I'll say it's nice not getting randomly kicked out of the game because my connection goes down. And I do notice a little bit less jitter because there's less of it on my end. A less packet drop just because that last couple miles between my ISP and the house is significantly better. However, well, there's one issue that I think I blame for not having a better experience and why we seem to play a team of Japanese players at least once a week. And that is that, well, when we first got the fiber set up, you can go into Black Ops 2's option settings and it'll tell you where it thinks you are and your geolocation based on your IP address. And when we first got the fiber, it thought we were in North Carolina. Still in the continental US, but about 1,000 miles out of the way. After a week or two, it finally updated from North Carolina to California and Google's Mountain View corporate headquarters, which is about 1,800 miles out of the way. Well, yeah, might be a little bit of an issue. See, the thing is that Black Ops 2 tries to use your location to start to pin down a reasonable selection of people to try to ping to try to find a good lobby. And so we're starting off a little bit in the wrong direction. I've also noticed in names and clan tags and emblems, like things like fewer references to regional sports teams. The kind of thing that tips you off that the regionalized matchmaking isn't quite working as well for you as it used to. Alright, I'm going to get into detail here. I did a lot of tests on speedtest.net and pingtest.net on both the old DSL and the new fiber, and I will try to summarize those as best I can. On the old DSL, speedtest.net, the closest server would ping anywhere from 33 to 39. And I'd get my download and upload speeds pretty much what I was paying for, with more than 90% of it, so I'd call that good. However, I'd ping a different server on the old DSL, and I'd get 14 to 19 pings with jitter that would go anywhere from 1 to 5 milliseconds. And yeah, that can be kind of high, and that was nasty, and I'd say that was fairly indicative of the issues that I was having with the old DSL. Now here's a surprise. On my fiber, well, I'll ping 1 to the Google Fiber speed test server. This ping test server that I got the best ping on the DSL, which was 14 fairly regularly, on the fiber it'll now ping in the 44 milliseconds, which is a significant jump. There are things like that that stick out, where in some places the DSL, despite lots of jitter, would often get better pings. It's fairly rare, but it does occasionally happen. But on the other hand, the fiber is generally much faster. I'll get sub 20 millisecond pings to Chicago fairly regularly. Dallas is fairly good. Lots of places. New York under 40. And now keep in mind that at 60 frames per second, it's what, 16.66 milliseconds between frames. And so these ping times under 20 milliseconds are amazing. Out on the West Coast, to the closest speed test server to the Google Fiber headquarters, I'd ping 47, 46, somewhere in there. But the big surprise was that when I tried the Comcast speed test servers, I would get significantly higher pings to those than I would to the other speed test servers in the same cities. The one that really sticks out, at least to me, was the Chicago one. I could get 15 millisecond pings to Chicago, but the Comcast one would be 85 milliseconds. Now, at first I was like, oh, it's got to be somewhere different on their network, probably optimized for their customers in their city. And then I went to talking to friends who I've been playing with for a long time, and they were in the charts there, and we'd been getting pretty bad pings to them, like 2-3 barring constantly, over 100 milliseconds, and that was noticeably worse than I've been getting with the DSL. So I did a fair amount of testing, messing around, trying to figure stuff out. I'm not an expert here, but I've done enough testing with all the trace routes to say with some measure of certainty this is what's going on. It also is backed up by what I'm seeing in-game in terms of what I'm pinging to my friends. And I don't know whose issue this is, one or both of them, but they need to get it worked out. But this is what's going on. It looks like all of the traffic between Google Fiber in Kansas City and anyone, anywhere on the Comcast network is going through California, by Palo Alto, by Google's Mountain View headquarters over there. And this adds, well, it's already said 47, 48 milliseconds to the pings to the speed test server out there, and so then it's got to get from there to wherever it's going and back. And so it adds a significant ping time to a lot of my connections to a lot of my friends who are on Comcast. For example, I'm pinging over 100 milliseconds 3-barring to a friend in Colorado. And other friends in fairly close locations that I had lower pings to with the DSL, and that's because of this just bizarre routing issue. For example, I don't think Time Warner is doing this. It doesn't look like it. I don't think Cox is doing this. It seems to be I mean, I can't test everything, but I can tell it's definitely something related to Comcast in some way. I don't know what's going on, but it's not working right, guys, and well, the connection is more stable than what I had with the DSL, but the ping times are still too high, really. So then I looked up a whole bunch of Battlefield 3 servers, on PC at least, and started pinging those all over the country, and a little international stuff, because I tend to play with an international crowd occasionally on Battlefield 3, on the Xbox at least, and so I decided to give it a try. And it wasn't a whole lot different from what I was getting with the speed test servers, and that is pretty darn good. Anywhere from 11, 12 milliseconds to places like Chicago and Dallas, to yeah, you're going overseas, London, 115. And not surprising there. We do still have to obey the laws of physics. So then I was like, awesome, I'm going to go play some Battlefield 3 and get some awesome pings to some servers. And I hopped on my Xbox and realized there's kind of an issue here. First of all, there's no way I can find the IP of the server I'm playing on the 360 at least. And then the other one is that I don't know which region some of these cities are in. For example, Dallas is definitely south, but what about St. Louis and Chicago? I'm guessing they're east, but I'm really not sure. That's the only options you get are east, west, and south. And I don't know what to think of that, and I really have no way to know for certain which city is in which group. If you do, please tell me. But so I have no idea where the server or what exactly my ping is when I'm connecting to it, because even on the dial-up, everything showed up, at least in the US, pretty much as having the maximum number of bars. God, why do we use that? That's a rant for another video. And speaking of another video, this one's already going for 20 minutes, so I'm going to cut it short. I know I promised some kind of perspective for what a gigabit kind of bandwidth is, but I think that would be better served by another video at this point. Anyway, guys, thanks for sticking around. I hope you found this interesting and informative, and I'll let you know. I'll put a comment or some annotations in there if Google and Comcast get their stuff sorted out. That should really improve my experience, and maybe it'll be worth looking into this again. But overall, hey, I have more bandwidth than I know what to do now, and it's been fun. Again, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.